Mobile phone operator VODACOM'S first half revenue is higher at just under 32 billion rand on the back of sustained growth in mobile data and the group's efforts to move outside the home market. Customers increased by more than 20% both in South Africa and international markets. VODACOM has increased its first half dividend to 260 cents but cautioned that it expects growth to slow in the second half. And Chief Executive Officer of the company, Peter Ace, now joins us in studio. Peter, great to have you on the program. Thank you so very much for joining us. We saw, as we mentioned, quite an increase across the board that came through, a strong increase in revenue. And also, customers regularly purchasing data bundles grew quite significantly. I mean, that was up around 90%. So interesting numbers that have come through. Take us over the period that was, because many were quite surprised by the strong performance.
So firstly, from all the businesses, good commercial operations. South Africa, good growth in the voice and the data side. We had guidance at the year start that we will have revenue growing at low single digit. So we outperformed that guidance. If you look at what's happened in the last part of the half, data tariffs have come down. And that's part of the reason why we're cautious looking into the second half, because the data tariff cuts will flow into the full second half. Also, there's a lot of competition in the South African market, but the fundamentals of the business good. If I look at the territory outside South Africa, good, strong performance. They maintaining the momentum that they started a while ago. For the first time in a long time, they're all contributing to the EBITDA. South Africa, the good story, data. Firstly, data in the group up 31.5%. Fueled a lot also now by smartphones. We're seeing good traction for smartphones, 4.1 million smartphones in South Africa now. So from where I sit, it's a strong set of results, paid good shareholder returns in the form of the 260 dividend at the end.
And Vickers, for you, I mean, when we look at the top 40 performance, it was the only share that was actually down. 0.7% on the top 40 index. MTN doing really well today. Most of the investors I spoke to were quite impressed with the numbers, but it's not being reflected in today's performance. Why
I think there's been the expectations for the results were maybe a little bit too strong. But again, if you look at the results for the 6 months and you look at all the things that have happened in that 6 months, I think actually a very good set of results. So really, it should actually lead to a stronger share price in the medium term. But I think there was maybe just a little bit too much expectation in the market about Vodacom.
Were you pleased with the numbers, or were you expecting something slightly better, Simon?
No, I think we all know where Vodacom is in terms of its growth profile. Probably, the share was weaker for one of two reasons, because it was slightly below consensus expectations, and the outlook for the second half was probably slightly weaker than what people expected, but we should see that offset by some margin gain in the second half. And the question I'd like to pose to Peter is, going forward in terms of the strategy for the business. On one hand, it seems it's a race between the elasticity that you see on the data side, the prices decreasing with the volumes going up. And on the other side, we're always looking for the next growth vector in a business. And my sense, going back 12 months ago, was that possibly it could be M-Pesa, as Vodacom becomes a major transactional player in that space. That creates a completely new industry for you to plan in, is essentially the next growth vector for the business. But I see there wasn't that much traction in that business in the results that were presented.
So firstly, a comment on the data. It's definitely still one of those strategic growth areas for us. And where we previously saw data modems, dongles drive the growth, we've now seen the growth come from the smartphones. So a typical smartphone, on average, the monthly usage up on last year, 150%. So average data usage from a smartphone now is 80 megabytes. So that's growing strong. Almost 900,000 new smartphones in South Africa. And this is fueled by smartphones becoming more affordable. We have smartphones, proper full Android touchscreen smartphones in the market for below 1,000 rand. So the data business, the strong growth that we've seen in this half year will continue. However, the revenue, the tariffs have come down. A lot of competitive activity in the market, a lot of promotional specials. We launched the promotion yesterday again. In August, the contract data tariffs came down. September, the prepaid data tariffs came down. So that will have an impact on the second half. But we've also worked the cost side of the equation hard. So the guidance that we gave at financial year start, where we will maintain, improve the EBITDA margins, that still holds. We also, and this is despite investing much more into the network to make sure that we can sustain the growth that's coming from the data. Your comment on M-Pesa, we still believe that a payment mechanism is part of the future solution, that you can do everything with your smartphone. So M-Pesa started in Kenya, and then it was also implemented in Tanzania. It's now getting good traction in Tanzania, 2.2 million active users. I think in October they transacted probably $340 million through the system. In South Africa, it's a little bit different here. You have a much better established banking sector. Regulations are very different. Also, what we find here is it's kind of a first world and third world in South Africa. So customers are used to transacting at proper retail outlets. So if we can't integrate an M-Pesa system with the retail point of sale, and the standard system can't do that, so we need to fix that. Also, if we can't interface properly with the banking systems, it will not take off in South Africa. So those things are all on the cards. So hopefully early next year we will have those, and I still believe M-Pesa will make a difference in South Africa as well.
Are you currently talking to banks in South Africa with regards to launching such interfaces at this point?
So firstly, we need to develop those interfaces so that we can properly seamlessly interface with point of sale and the banking side. And so we will be interfacing as soon as we have those interfaces.
You're talking about the smartphone penetration in South Africa and in Africa across the board actually increasing quite dramatically. How does that then counteract the usage when it comes to, for instance, text messages, where we're seeing users using less text messages and rather going onto the internet on their phones and using WhatsApp to communicate? Is that, would you say, a hindrance to overall average revenue per user, or would you say that the data bundles that are being purchased are then counteracting the losses on the other end?
Good
How does
point.
it balance it out?
Yes, so it balances at the moment, and we see additional growth coming from it. So firstly, there's the whole BlackBerry community with BlackBerry Messenger, very popular, where you pay a monthly bundle, 59 Rand, and in there's all your on-phone internet experiences, including the messaging, but also you still pay for your voice calls outside it. If you look at WhatsApp, you mentioned WhatsApp, it's not really taken off in South Africa. The community isn't that big. The BlackBerry community is probably 1.6 million in South Africa. On the smartphone side, it will become more and more popular, and in the long term it will become very popular. And what we are doing is we're bundling services to make it attractive for customers to buy up, so they have their voice
Convergence
services.
within the product space, essentially.
100%.
Peter, would you say that you've always got to be just very innovative? I'm sure that the competitive environment is increasing dramatically. We know that ATA is now in the market. We know that MTN is also piloting an LTE product. I know that Vodacom is also piloting an LTE product. So we're starting to see a very different environment, and it's growing so fast. How do you stay on the ball to ensure that you do have competitive advantage in South Africa?
So firstly, competition is good for the consumer, and we've seen it play out in the data space, where the data tariffs have come down dramatically, but also in the voice side. But just look at the voice effective price per minute, how it's come down over the last 12 months. So our on-net traffic outgoing traffic has increased 34%. That has driven down the effective price per minute, the price that subscribers pay, by 24%. So the customers are benefiting from the competition. On the data side, it's very competitive. We firstly have to make sure that the network quality is very good. So we're investing for that, 3 billion in the 6 months going into the South African network to support more growth. And then on the technology side, we have to keep ahead. We have 4,700 3G base stations now. The latest technology is what's called 43 megabits per second. So more than half of our 3G base stations have been upgraded to support that technology. And we'll continue to invest for the future.
So, Vikas, do you use WhatsApp?
Yes, I do actually,
Okay.
and I also use BlackBerry Messenger, so I actually have both on my phone. But the question from my side is more of a financial thing, because the one thing that stood out for me in the results was actually the increase in dividend. So there's what you're seeing is a massive increase in spending on the network, and there's a better dividend. So it actually looks like a very confident company at this point.
That's a very good point. So after the big investment, after the step up in the investment, we still had 3.8 billion cash available. Our debt to EBITDA is at the moment sitting at 0.5. So it's no use taking more of that cash and pay down the debt even further. We also didn't find anything productive to invest in the 6 months. So we decided, although we have a dividend policy of 70% of headline earnings, that we will pay out all the available cash, and that's where the 80% to 60 came from.
Peter, would you say that we're going to see a dramatically increasing competitive environment within the data space where we start to see prices coming down significantly? We know that a lot of South Africans are waiting for a good quality uncapped product. Is Vodacom going to be offering that going forward?
So uncapped in the mobile space is always a tricky one, because you're working with a scarce resource, spectrum.
The auctioning of the spectrum is, of course, imminent, we hope.
Yeah, so there's a lot of uncertainty in the regulatory environment around spectrum. When will it come out? So as long as you have uncertainty, as long as you have limited spectrum, to make it fully uncapped is just not going to work. Take the BlackBerry, what happened recently. There are some customers that have found a way of taking their 59 Rand a month service and making it uncapped, and they're just surfing the web and downloading stuff, and it's affecting the quality of the network for everybody in the end. We've now upgraded the BlackBerry pipe overseas to, I think it's 1.5 gigabits per second. Now that's a big pipe, and we're just not coping to put more capacity in there fast enough. So uncapped, but competition, good. The prices have come down dramatically over the last 12 months. I mentioned we brought it down 22%. Promotions are very active in the market. We launched a promotion yesterday for 500 Rand, you can buy 20 gigs over the festive season. That is a good deal.